everyone. I'm going to be in a socially distanced by some miles conversation with Alan Godfrey. I am a local historian, tour guide, adult education tutor, and one of the things that I do is write text to go with some of the Alan Godfrey Edition maps. And I thought it would be a nice idea to talk to Alan and find out a little bit about the history of this great enterprise, because Alan, when you started, you really started a new thing, didn't you? Do you want to tell us about it?
Yes, it was totally new. And I was in the early 80s. I moved to Dunstan in 1980. And at that time, I was running a small dealership in second-hand ordnance survey maps, which I'd started 2 or 3 years before in Shrewsbury. And really, I went in to see my bank manager one day, and I was summoned in, I think. It was a regular occurrence. And he suggested, why didn't I reprint the maps? And of course I said, oh, there are plenty of reasons why not. But you go away and you start thinking about these things. And I did a trial one of Chopwell in photocopied form. And then I went along to Gateshead Library and borrowed a map, a 25-inch map of Gateshead East, 1894, 95. Got it photographed and wrote some notes for it. And September 1981, we had the first map. And that's how it all began.
Wow, so nearly 50 years.
Well, nearly
40 years.
Nearly
40 years. 40 years, yes. Maybe I'm a better writer than I am a mathematician. Yes, nearly 40 years of map producing. Has anyone else done anything similar?
There have been one or two. There was somebody in Scotland who published reprints of the 1-inch maps of Scotland, and David and Charles did reprints of the 1-inch map of England and Wales back in the early 1970s, I think. And there have been one or two local things, but nothing on this scale. I mean, I've done over 3,000 now, and we got coverage in every county of England and Wales, and most Scottish ones as well now, and it grows and grows.
Incredible, amazing, a really good story. And I can imagine, out of all the years that you've been in business, this year has been particularly challenging. How have you managed to cope with our difficult year?
Yes, it was quite scary at first, and I had a coffee with a close friend on the 20th of March, Friday, and we knew there was going to be a lockdown on the Monday. We were fairly certain. It was already partial lockdown, but we knew that Boris would be speaking on the Monday. And so on that Friday, I did all those things. I got my car filled with petrol, and I probably got my hair cut, all these things, so I was ready. And I had coffee with a friend, and she asked how I would do, and I said, well, I'm quite frightened. It's quite frightening. And she said, well, why don't you perhaps retire now? And I said, oh, I don't want to do that. And anyway, I said, I quite like a challenge. And so we had discussions at work, and we thought of, I've got 2 colleagues, and we thought of one being furloughed. But then after about a week, we thought, well, it hasn't completely died, the business. And we kept it for 2 or 3 weeks on a care and maintenance basis, just opening about 3-4 afternoons a week, and the orders were trickling in. And our printer closed, so for 2 months we wouldn't be able to do any new maps. But business began to grow, and we got that government grant of £10,000. That came through amazingly quickly. It came through within 48 hours of applying for it. And I think people forget how brilliantly that was organised, certainly in County Durham. It was really brilliant. And that was a tremendous help and like a vote of confidence, I think. But within a month, business was quite good. And by the middle of May, we were booming. And so we were open all hours as usual. Mm-hmm. And by June, I was able to publish new maps. I was able to persuade my printer to go back part-time, giving them a large bunch of maps so they could open for 4 or 5 days and just print our maps. And there we are. And we actually had a very good summer, the best summer we've had for 6 or 7 years. So it was amazing.
Incredible. Well, it's nice to hear of a success story for this year, I think. I think we all need a bit of good news to cheer us up. So that's good, Alan. So you're not giving up anytime soon?
No, I am.
You're keeping going.
Yes, I mean, I'm hating the lockdown, and especially at the moment, the social life has disappeared virtually, and that's awful. But I'm doing a lot of writing. I've never done as much writing for the maps in my life. I'm writing an introduction for a map every week. And of course, now I can go on certain journeys. I can research around Teesside. I've been spending quite a bit of time around Leeds and Wakefield, which is fairly easy to get to. So the program of maps we're publishing is rather different from that which it would have been. But we are producing basically 4 new maps every fortnight, and it keeps me sane. I'll keep going as long as I can.
Well, that's good. Would you like to just explain to people a little bit about the Ordnance Survey and the fact that there are different series and different timescales for your maps?
Yes, well, the Ordnance Survey began really in, I think, 1799 as the recognised early date, and it began as a defence project to do inch-to-the-mile maps of southern England at a time, of course, when we were worried about Napoleon and his crew. And so for the first 30 odd years, they concentrate on what we now call the old series of 1 inch to the mile maps. And from about the 1820s, 1830s, they began to produce larger scale maps, 6 inches to the mile, especially in Ireland and Yorkshire and Lancashire. And then from around the 1840s, more 1850s, began to produce larger maps, 25 inch to the mile, of which Durham was fairly early. And those are the maps we basically concentrate on. These large scale 25 inch maps, really, which could be classed as plans rather than maps. And we produce them, we reduce them in scale so they're more manageable, and we package them with an introduction by you or me or one of our cohort of authors.
And there are the maps themselves have been produced over a variety of years, haven't they?
Yes.
So, you've got things like the 2nd series and the 3rd series.
That's right. And in the Ordnance Survey, the surveyors would come in and survey an area, and then 30 years later or so, they would come back and revise it, slightly dependent on the area. You get some moorland areas which are only revised every so often. The Isle of Man seems never to have been revised properly until recent times. And so it does vary. But in the northeast, in County Durham, for instance, there was an early series in the 1850s, and then another series in the 1890s, which is one we like to concentrate on. Very good one. And then there were more around about 1913. And if you're lucky, there are some more in the 1930s, but that's quite patchy. So really the 1890s and then around about 1913.
Yeah. Because it's quite good, isn't it, to have more than one map of the same area so that you can see how an area changes over time. It's quite interesting to do that, isn't it?
Yes, I love that. You could put them side by side and so on. And some areas we've done 3. I think Hartlepool was the first place we did 3 different editions. We did that quite early. Hartlepool was one of my great early success stories. We had a stockist there, and he had people queuing down the street to buy my maps. And that was in the mid-80s, about 1985. It was great. And so we did 3 editions, 1857, I think, 1894 and 1914 of the 2 main Hartlepool maps. And we've done this in a lot of other areas. Some areas we've been able to do 4 different editions. And in central Birmingham, we're thinking of actually doing a 5, which would be great. It's lovely you can get 4 different editions, perhaps at 20-year intervals.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes, it is. It is good. So when you Well, let's say you decide on a map that you're going to publish, and if you're going to write it yourself, you would, I presume, go and if you can, have a walk around the area.
Yes.
To do a bit of research.
Yes.
And then what do you like to find? What excites you when you walk around an area?
Okay. Well, I tend to do a little bit of research beforehand. So I've got a map and I mark a few things on. I put a circle around churches, for instance, I want to look at, perhaps a mill, a factory, something that's a bit unusual. So I've got a few focal points and I think I can construct a walk which will take in most of those. And of course, at the moment I'm driving. I haven't been on train since March, but normally I used to go by train most often. And I would arrive at a place and set off to walk around what I call a perambulation, which is a Nicholas Pevsner term, I think. I think it's that. And I'd walk for anything between 3 and 6 miles round that map. And a mile is up, the map is 1.5 miles across and 1 mile up. So just to walk from one end of the map to the other and back again is 3 miles.
Yeah.
So it's good, keeps me fit, and it's wonderful. And I've just been down to Wakefield, and I walked round on a Sunday late in the afternoon. I arrived down there and I thought, I've got time for a short walk. This is Wakefield South, and it started really well. The walk, it had the railway station, which is quite an early one, Kirkgate Station. So I took a photo, and then there's a bridge with a chantry chapel on the bridge, one of only 4 chapels on the bridges in the country at Wakefield. And then I headed off down this road, and there wasn't much of interest, and it seemed to go on and on and on and on. And I walked, and eventually I found Wakefield Trinity's rugby league ground. So that was quite nice to see. It looked a bit ramshackle, but that was good. But then I had to walk back along the same road. So it felt like one of the less exciting perambulations, really. But there's great stuff to write about, and I found a few things the next day.
Yeah. Yes. What sort of things really do you like to write about?
I like writing about industry and transport, railways, canals. Those are always good. And I know a lot of our readers do buy them for that. They're important aspects. Collieries are really good. And the ideal is a mix of housing, industry, transport, and infrastructure, things like hospitals. And I've been writing about hospitals today in Wakefield, and they're quite interesting to write about if you can find good sources, and workplaces, all those things, really. But you want a nice mix, and I think that's what the readers like. You absorb yourself in a map, don't you?
Yes. Have you ever made, when you've been writing up a map, have you ever made a really serious error?
Yes, I'm sure I've made dreadful errors. And we do occasionally get letters from people that say, oh, you've made a bit of a hoo-ha here, you've got that and that. And we say, oh, thank you very much. But and I think, one of the great heroes of mine is Pevsner with the Buildings of England series. And they always say in the introduction, if readers find any errors or new things that need to do please tell us. We make mistakes and we rely on sources which might be wrong. I don't think I'd make too many catastrophic errors, and I hope not. Perhaps I mislead other people. Perhaps they look at what I've written and think, oh, Mr. Godfrey says that, it must be fact. But I hope I'm fairly reliable.
So you write text for a lot of your maps, particularly this year. You have done a lot, haven't you?
Yeah.
But you have other authors who write. How did you start choosing your authors? Who were the first authors that you had?
Well, it's local history librarians. I mean, Frank Manders at Newcastle would have been right at the beginning. I think he wrote the notes about the 3rd map. And Tom Corfe at Sunderland, of course, was a great expert on Sunderland then. But most were local history librarians for the first 10, 20 years, probably. There's some archivists, but more local history librarians like yourself. And I would go to libraries. I didn't have the confidence to write many of the notes myself in those days. So I would go to the libraries, wherever it was, at Sandwell or Rotherham or Alloa, wherever, and speak to the local history librarian and say, would you like to write the notes? And sometimes they said no, but more often than not, they said, yes, we'd like to. And so that's how it really started in that way.
And the final question really is how, because people will be sitting here thinking, yes, but are they very expensive, these maps?
They're £3 each. £3 each. You can't complain about that.
Can't complain about £3. I don't know what else you can buy for £3. Anyway, it's been lovely talking to you today, Alan, and I wish you every success. I hope the voucher continues for many more years. And thank you very much for taking part in this meandering through maps talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthea.